So we're going to begin day 3 of our sermon preparation. And as in the other days, I'd like to begin by sharing what the goal of the study is. And today it's pretty simple. You need to summarize your entire message in a single sentence. So in the study part, that means you have to read what others have preached on and how they've applied the passage. You have to be sure to read sermons, both new and old, so that your application is formed by a diversity of cultural and theological perspectives. The result then is that you have to know why you're going to preach and what you want people to take home. And to do that, you have to answer 4 basic questions. First, what is the historical truth? So the best way to get to this is you reread the passage outline that you created in the previous days, and in a single noun phrase you summarize the dominant theme the biblical author wanted to get across to those hearing and reading their message. The second question you have to answer is, what is the timeless truth? And to get to this, you reread the timeless outline, and then in a single noun phrase, again, you summarize the dominant theme God has intended for every generation. The third question you have to answer is, what is the central truth? So you do this by reading both your historical and timeless truth statements and answer the question in a single noun phrase, why did God want this story told? And then the last question you have to answer is, what is your take-home truth? That is, what is the single message you want your hearers today to take home and apply to their life? The take-home truth really answers this question, what happens next? So now that you know the goal and where we're headed, let's go to our logos and open up the items that will be a part of our layout for today. In my last video, I showed my day 2 layout, and I showed you how to create that layout from scratch. So to kind of save a few minutes, because I've shown that a couple times now, I'm just going to go here to the menus at the top, click on layouts, and I'm going to go straight to my Homiletics day 3 layout for application. You'll notice that my passage guide in the center opened up to the previous passage I did a study on. So I'm going to right now just change that to Galatians chapter 1, which is where we're doing our current study. I'm going to run that passage guide. Now before we go to what the content there is, let me just show you over on the left, as in the previous days, I have a tab for my favorites. I have a tab for the information window, so if I'm looking at any words in any of the books or my Bibles, I can find that information very quickly. In the center, of course, as we just saw, I have the customized passage guide for this day of my homiletics. And finally, over here on the right, I have a space just to open up all my commentaries and books as I read along. So let me just cover over what's in the center. Here we have the custom passage guide for our day 3 application, and as in the previous days, it begins with the section for my content, and notice now it's starting to show all the notes and clippings I took from previous days. So I have my Galatians 1 clippings here, and I have my notes as well. But now also notice below that I have clippings, what's called biblical community, and in that one I've happened to been doing some study on community in the New Testament church, and I have a clippings note in that references Galatians chapter 1. So that also showed up in my search of the content. So that's important to note, that it's not just the note files that I've created related to this specific sermon this week, but anytime I've referenced Galatians 1 in another note or anywhere in the past, that will show up in the My Content section as well. So this is where Logos becomes important, 4 or 5 years down the road, where I've taken lots of notes and lots of clippings, and Logos will find all the relevant information for me as time goes on. Now below that, I have a commentary section, and this one is focused on homiletical commentaries, And as I mentioned in the previous video, homiletical commentaries are really those that are used to be sermons that were preached somewhere, and now they've kind of been put into a commentary format. So that's a great resource for application. Below that, I have a collection of sermons. And what I have in Logos is a lot of sermons by people like Whitfield or Wesley or Piper and those people. And so what I've been able to do is gather a lot of those sermons, and then I search those for anything that relates to my study for the week. In this case, again, Galatians chapter 1. And then below that, the final section of this passage guide is Bible studies. And what I have here is in my library, there's a lot of resources and books that were written as Bible study materials. Now, what I like about these is a lot of times they'll have questions, they'll have input that is very practical in terms of application. So sometimes there's some great hints inside of these. So those are good to look through at this day of the sermon preparation as well. Or if you're going to build small group materials off your sermon, this is another great search field to have in your passage guide. It helps you put together some good materials. And as in previous days of my study, I want to now also open up a new clippings file, and I'm going to name this Homiletics Day 3, and that's also going to be Galatians 1. Alright, and that's where I would take clippings and notes from any of those commentaries, the homiletical commentaries or sermons, or any of the other Bible study materials that I find over here. And I'm going to drag that down to take the bottom of this space. And again, as in previous weeks, I'm going to open up a new note file. And I'm going to also call this one Homiletics Day 3, Galatians chapter 1. Now, as I drag this down, notice that I've done this in previous weeks. I go over here to my favorites where I want to keep everything organized, and I go to my New Testament, and there's my section on Galatians, and I want to drag each tab right in and drop it. So now I have a shortcut link to that note. But now you'll also notice that there's getting a lot of information here just for Galatians chapter 1. And as I go through other chapters, that's going to add to what could really become a cluttered mess if it's not organized properly. So I want to take just a minute in the middle of this video to show how to keep notes organized. In keeping notes organized, there's two things I want to go over. First, the notes themselves within the Bible text, and then also the organization of notes within the favorites. So first let's look at the notes within the text themselves. Now you'll notice here in Galatians 1, where we've been working through in this video series, I've already got two notes connected with that chapter. One is actually in red and one is actually yellow. And now we're in day 3, and I'm going to make another note because as I go to accomplish my goals for each day, I need to have a special note for that. So I right click, here I select the reference for Galatians 1:1, and now I'm going to come down here and to my Homiletics Day 3 Galatians 1 note, I add this. And here I would answer my first question: what is the historical truth? And then of course I would have my answer here as part of the text. But now I'm left with the idea that we've got notes that are the same color. It can be rather confusing, and it can kind of make a mess of the text. You'll see here I've got now 2 yellow notes and a red note. So what are we going to do to make sure that this stays organized? So we come back here, and here I have my sermon planner template, which has a note for each day of my sermon preparation. Now below I have day 1A observation, and I have a dark red color assigned to the notes for that part of the day. As I scroll down, we have day 1B, the second part where I do meaning, and I still kept it in red because it's part of my day 1, but I just used a lighter color red for that day. Scrolling down in day 2, I chose to use yellow for my notes on exposition. In day 3 of application, I used blue for all my application notes. Day 4 is illustration, and there I have green as my note color. In day 5, that's my confrontation and conversation notes, and those I have sort of a light brown color. So looking back up, we see that according to the way I have my notes, I have blue for day 3. So I want to go back to my note over here, and I click that little yellow icon, and now I'm going to select blue. So all of my notes for this day, I'm going to make sure I highlight as blue. Now if I go back to my scripture, I look and I see I have a red, a blue, and a yellow note. And those are then correspond to my notes. As I go through, I recognize that if a note is a part of day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of my sermon preparation. That's the first key to keeping notes within the text organized, is to have a color system. You might have your own. This is just the one that I chose because it makes the most sense to me, and it makes my notes within the text look very nice and clean. A final note on that is if I want to get rid of those notes and not have them show, I can simply go to here, and I clicked on this little 3 circles, and when I did that, I'm shown all of my notes that are now visible. So I can just simply uncheck any one of those, and you'll see the note right here disappeared. Watch as I recheck that, the note file appears again. So this is an easy way to turn off all of your note colors, or some of them, whatever you want to make sure is visible or not within your notes. So finally, I want to just show you how to organize notes in the favorites, but alas, I am out of time, so I will save that for a little bit of odds and ends in the next video. Alright, with that, you know how to set up your day 3 for sermon preparation with logos. The only thing left to do is to go to my layouts, and I'm going to right click on my saved layout, and I'm going to update that so that I make sure the next time I open that layout I haven't lost any of my work and I know right where I left off. Alright, and that ends this video for today.